They've had some lapses on the defensive end throughout the season, including against the Wildcats, but make no mistake, the Florida Gators are a pretty good basketball team.
You are Locked On Kentucky, your daily podcast on the Kentucky Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, what's going on, Big Blue Nation? Welcome on into Locked On Kentucky, your daily Kentucky Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Lance Dawe, writer for Sports Illustrated for various SEC-related things. But on this podcast, we take a dive into all things Kentucky athletics. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can make every moment more, and new customers join today, and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. On today's episode of Locked On Kentucky, we are going to be previewing Kentucky basketball's second matchup with the Florida Gators, this time in Rupp Arena. What's happened since both of these teams faced off? What do we need to know about this team? What has changed? What is the same? Going to talk about the strengths and the weaknesses of this squad, how they played against UK the first time, and then we're going to give our final score predictions at the end. Thank you so much for making Locked On Kentucky your first listen every single day. Want to remind everyone out there that we are free and available on all platforms. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe to the show. And if you're listening on podcast, I would greatly appreciate it if you subscribed there as well. So let's go ahead and get into it. The Florida Gators, what have they done since playing Kentucky? Well, you want to look at their overall record right now, 14-6, 4-3 in conference play. Since playing the Wildcats, though, they are 4-2 in league competition, losing immediately after against their game against the Wildcats, losing to Ole Miss, giving up 103 points in the process. Got a home win against Arkansas, went on the road, was blown out by the Tennessee Volunteers, Missouri, Mississippi State, and Georgia. 3 straight wins for the Gators ever since. Riding into this contest, playing some pretty good offense, especially strong guard play. We'll talk about that later on in the show. But the Gators, even though they've had some lapses, in which we will get into them, overall, I still think this is a pretty darn good basketball team. And we've gotten to see that firsthand as we've watched Kentucky play them in Gainesville. Very close game. Kentucky able to clutch it out there with some free throws late, able to pull away, kind of similar to what they did against Arkansas, where it was a back and forth affair, and Kentucky was able to do some things in the second half that helped them get in front, and then they were kind of able to stay in front later in the game. Impressive what Kentucky was able to do in Gainesville, but this time it's in Rupp, so a little bit of a different environment. That's one thing that's going to change here today between the Gators and the Wildcats. Florida is now number 39 in the net rankings. Unfortunately, that is not good enough to be a quadrant 1 opportunity for UK tomorrow. Florida needs to be inside the top 30 in the net ratings. I think it's ratings, not rankings, for this to be a Q1 win for the Wildcats if they do win the game. Again, 4-2 in SEC play are the Florida Gators, kind of on the come up. So if they're able to win some games after this in their stretch, which if you go and look at their schedule, they've got Texas A&M on the road, Auburn at home, LSU at home, Georgia at home, Georgia on the road, and then Bama on the road. I mean, that's a stretch right there where if you somehow miraculously go 4-1, then you're looking at a possibility of being, firmly inside the Q1 there. It's interesting to note also, this is true for a couple of different SEC teams. Florida is number 39 in the net ratings, right? There are like 363 teams in Division I college basketball. Number 39, and yet they are 0-6 in quadrant 1 opportunities so far this year. Just goes to show you sometimes the metrics favor some other things outside of strong wins, and you can be a really good basketball team, have yet to pick up a strong yet to pick up a strong win, and things like the net rankings still say, hey, you're a really good team. You can also point to KenPom right now. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, both Auburn and Alabama sitting in the top 10, despite Auburn having lost 2 straight, Bama at 14-6. They're 2 good basketball teams, despite their records looking maybe a little bit different, maybe some other eye test problems as well. The defense, like I mentioned, has taken a bit of a slide despite not being great to begin with. Now number 99 in adjusted defensive efficiency. Kentucky moved from number 98 to number 70 in that category on KenPom after their victory against Arkansas, only allowing 87 points on the road, 57 points on the road, scored 87 against the Gators in their first contest this season. But I would say that these defenses are similar in the fact that they have the ability to give up spurts and give up runs to different competition, both good and bad offenses. We take a look at what we talked about, I believe the first go-around, the Gators have defeated top 50 opponents in Pittsburgh and Michigan, also have now defeated Mississippi State, got that 79-70 win at home against a top 35 opponent on KenPom. Very solid pickup there, but yeah, again, not a quadrant one victory. Things to note about the Gators that they do really well. They play with a lot of tempo. They have run up and down the court so far this season, and they elected to do so as well against the Wildcats. Number 18 nationally in adjusted tempo, top 25 also in average possession length on offense. So they can scoot up and down the court, and they can really push it. The thing that makes their offense go, and it's why they're top 15 nationally in adjusted offensive efficiency, is their ability to rebound the basketball. They are second in the nation in offensive rebounding percentage. The thing that I'm actually going to be looking for here in a week or so is their battle against Texas A&M, who is the number one team in the nation in offensive rebound percentage. Both of those teams do a really good job of collecting second chance points, despite not being particularly efficient from three, and good but not great from inside the arc are the Florida Gators. They are also a terrible free throw shooting team, which has improved. We'll detail that later, but it's a fast-paced team that does give up things on the defensive end, gave up some things on the defensive end against the Wildcats, but also they did some really interesting things to UK that I don't necessarily know they're going to do or really be able to do against the Wildcats this time around. I kind of want to dive into that in just a second. Before I do that, though, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at FanDuel. Happy Super Bowl to all who celebrate from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And if you're like me, Super Bowl Sunday is all about scoring the best seat on the couch, grabbing your favorite football snacks, grabbing your friends, and placing some super awesome bets. FanDuel has so many different ways for you to end the season with a W or 2 or 3, depending on what you want to do, because not only can you bet on who will win Super Bowl 58 between the Niners and the Chiefs, but FanDuel also has bets for which players may score a touchdown, how many points will be scored in total, and so much more on top of that. So new customers, if you join today, you will get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. All you have to do is visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. That is FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, continuing along here on the Tuesday edition of Locked On Kentucky, Lance Dawe hanging out here with you. Again, really appreciate you checking out Locked On Kentucky today. If you're listening on any podcast feed or on the YouTube channel, I would greatly appreciate it if you subscribed to the show, pushing 7,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel, which is just wild to think about. We've come so far as a Big Blue Nation, and I appreciate everybody that tunes in. Subscribe if you have not already. So we talked about some of the things that the Gators do well. I do want to make a couple of more notes here, some positive things that we need to identify for the Gators before we talk about the matchup previously. Zyon Pullin was the player before the SEC slate that I had identified as the Gators MVP. Averaging a little over 14 a game, dishing out about 5 assists per game. He's now down to 4.8. But he's a good three-point shooter, one of the better ones on this roster, and then he is also one of the better free throw shooters, and is just kind of slightly underneath average when it comes to field goal efficiency for his position. But he's a good guard. He plays a lot of minutes for the Gators, alongside a few other guards that looked pretty good against Kentucky this past go-around, including the player who I believe was just impossible to stop in all phases of the game, Walter Clayton Jr., who's averaging 16 points per game, almost 4 rebounds per contest, while shooting 35% from deep and 43% from the floor. If you go and look at this game, this past contest between the Gators and the Wildcats, Walter Clayton had 23 points, was 3 of 11 from deep. Zyon Pullin had 23 points, was 2 of 4 from deep, also dished out 3 assists, and was named the MVP of the contest according to KenPom, despite Florida losing. Those two guards are really good. There's no other way to put it. They're really, really solid guards for the Gators. Another player that we did not necessarily get to see go off against the Wildcats this past go-around, Will Richard, who is averaging almost 12 points a game, also shooting 35% from three. He's a decent rebounder as well, more of a scorer, less of a distributor. And then also Riley Kugel, who is averaging 10.5 per contest and is not the most efficient shooter. He's kind of the NBA prospect that we identified, like even before the season started. We were talking about SEC basketball, and that was a guy where we went, hey, this is somebody that's got that potential to take the next step. Not really showed a whole lot this year, but man, he played really well against Kentucky. Had 15 points off the bench, shot 50% from the floor, was 2 of 4 from beyond the arc, 3 of 6 from inside the arc, also shot 50% from the foul line, which is kind of funny as well. But he had so many different moments in that game, even where he missed a couple of different shots, Kugel did, where it was just really impressive. Part of it was Kentucky's lackluster defense. Part of it was just the pure athleticism that Kugel has, exploding to the rim, these really sharp, quick cuts that caught Kentucky off guard to the basket. He's a really good player, and whenever he's got his three-point shot going, it's hard to stop. So you've got Clayton, you've got Pullin, you've got Kugel, and you've got Richard. All four of those guys really can churn it up for the Gators at different points. Not all of them at once necessarily, but it's kind of similar to Kentucky in the fact that they've got four guards that any given night, one of them's probably going to go off, probably two, and if you can't hold all four of them down, they're going to put 90 on you. That's just kind of how Kentucky's operated so far this season. So Florida, despite being one of the taller teams in the SEC and having some really interesting front court presences, Micah Handglotton, Alex Condone, who also had 10 points against the Wildcats and just kind of was given opportunities and kind of was able to pick and choose his spots against UK. They've got some solid players. Overall, I've really liked this roster. I said this way back in August, I think, on this show talking about Florida. I said this before the SEC slate started, and I'm saying it again. I think this team has potential. I think they have the ability to turn things on. It's just, we'll get to the negatives here in a second. They just can't really put it together consistently on defense, and that's kind of held them back. And it's what held them back against Kentucky, giving up 87 points at home and kind of allowing Antonio Reeves to have a day. 19 points for Antonio Reeves this previous time around. DJ Wagner had an efficient outing, was 1 of 2 from 3 and had 14 points. Trey Mitchell had a good outing, almost had a double-double in some clutch moments late. Aaron Bradshaw and Reed Shepherd also in double figures, with Reed Shepherd going 9 of 11 from the foul line. It's just, Florida could not hold Kentucky's scores from getting to the rim and executing. Kentucky did not shoot particularly well from beyond the arc, which is something we'll discuss later, but they were able to kind of capitalize whenever they were able to get to the rim, and then also a little bit to the foul line. So this past go-around, Kentucky and Florida were able to score almost at will at different points in the contest. And I'm really curious to see if that's the case again, because of the way Kentucky has been trending on offense with these lackluster efforts against South Carolina and Arkansas. Are they going to be able to return home and kind of return to form, get back to where they were and that 103-point performance against Georgia earlier this season? Will they also maybe continue to step up on defense? Will they be able to do that 2 games in a row after holding Arkansas to 57? That's something that we need to monitor in this game. Are they able to kind of build here and play more aggressive, play more physical against a team that I think Kentucky can hold from beyond the arc? We'll just have to wait and see. A couple of other things I also want to note. Florida, like I mentioned earlier, they are still a poor free throw shooting team. They've actually improved going from shooting about 66% to 68.5%. Obviously, conference play, I think, develops more urgency there. And then also something else I want to point out. They are pretty, at different points, they are pretty turnover prone, are the Florida Gators. They're one of the worst teams in the nation in steal percentage on offense. They're pretty mediocre overall in terms of turnover percentage as a team, but they really do struggle holding on to the basketball at different points. Kentucky ended up with 6 steals last time. That's not a lot, but I would expect that's something Kentucky focuses on. I also would expect Kentucky to try and work the ball a little bit more outside because of the fact that they only took 23 pointers in Gainesville. I think they're going to come back home and they're going to be able to shoot just a little bit more from beyond the arc. So those are the things that the Gators do well. They struggle on defense. I think Kentucky can take advantage of some things. Let's wrap up this conversation. Let's wrap up some thought process, give you some notes about what we need to pay attention to in this game specifically. Before we do all of that, though, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at Jace Medical. I know we come to sports to escape from some of the crazy realities of real life, but can we just talk for a second about preparing for real life? Because according to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics right in the middle of the worst flu season in over a decade. I can't imagine a more helpless feeling than if one of my significant others or one of my family members got sick while a supply chain issue kept them from life-saving medication they needed. Thankfully, we will be okay because of Jace Medical. The Jace case that they provide has a pack of 5 different antibiotics to treat a long list of bacterial illnesses, including UTIs, respiratory infections, skin infections, among others. Any of these different things could happen to any of us literally at any time. And if you want to stay safe, you can visit jacemedical.com and complete a physician encounter. It will be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at the fraction of the regular cost. It's never been more important to be prepared than today. You can go to jacemedical.com and use offer code LOCKEDON to get $20 off your order. Again, jacemedical.com, offer code LOCKEDON to get $20 off your order. All right, wrapping up the Tuesday edition of Locked On Kentucky. Again, if you have not subscribed to the show already, I'd appreciate it if you did that. So we have a couple final thoughts here to wrap up the show about this contest between the Florida Gators and the Kentucky Wildcats. We've talked about what Florida does well, what happened in the last contest that these two teams played. So here are some bullet point things that we just kind of want to run over, and then I'll give my final score prediction here, things that I think are going to significantly impact this game. Kentucky's got to find a way to keep Florida off of the offensive glass. They had 11 offensive rebounds last contest out against the Wildcats. Kentucky's got to be able to control that just a little bit better. I know Florida's got some height. They've got some pace. They've got some aggression to them. They got some fire. I like this roster. I like Todd Golden. I think this team's got potential, but Kentucky's got to be able to hold them off of that offensive glass and do a better job rebounding. Another thing here that I have in my notes, and I'm just going to read it verbatim. There's no way Florida hits 9 threes again, right? Right? Because Florida, while they did not shoot particularly well from beyond the arc against Kentucky, only shot 29%. They went 9 of 31. They were chucking them up. They were chucking up a lot of three-pointers, and they knocked down, again, 9 of them. Zyon Pullin was 2 of 4. Riley Kugel was 2 of 4 off the bench. Alex Condone, the 6'11 freshman, was 1 of 2. Walter Clayton, despite only shooting 3 of 11, was able to knock down 3 different three-pointers. Will they shoot as many, and will they make as many against Florida this time around? I feel like I'm having a deja vu moment here where this kind of happened the first matchup 2 seasons ago between these two teams, where Kentucky I can't remember if they were the ones that were getting kind of pushed off the three-point line or if it was actually Florida was getting pushed off the three-point line. It was 5 of 22, Kentucky 10 of 27, and then the second go around, I was curious to see if that three-point shooting changed a little bit. Kentucky really slowed down their three-point shot, and Florida shot even worse in the second go-around. So maybe this is a situation here where Florida will take less threes, make less threes, and shoot somewhere around 29 to 30% again, which is something that we need to pay attention to. How does Kentucky defensively come out in this game? Do they give up some three-point shots early? Because that feels like sort of a trend in Rupp, where it's not like, oh, everybody shoots phenomenally in Rupp. It's just normally teams shoot well in the first half against Rupp, or at least early they get some rhythm going. And that will be something that Kentucky's also got to put a hold on. I think there's going to be less free throws for both teams this time. I think that's something that's going to impact this game. Last time around, Kentucky had 28 free throws, made 20 of them. Florida had 29 free throws and made 18 of them. I think we're going to see slightly less free throws from both these teams. Neither of these teams do an insane job at drawing fouls. Both of them, or Kentucky does a pretty bad job. Florida does an above average job, but nobody does it at an elite level. Excuse me. So I think we may see less here. I also think that while Florida is really good, I think that Kentucky will probably have the game not in hand, but to the point where you won't be fouling a ton to jack up those free throw totals at the end. I think that there is going to be better outside shooting and distribution of the basketball for Kentucky in this one. And that's kind of where, honestly, my prediction for this game starts and ends. Kentucky went 5 of 20 from beyond the arc, shot 25%. If they are able to shoot more threes and make more threes, which this offense is capable of on any given night, I think they're going to win the game. Kentucky only had 6 assists this past go-around against Florida. Florida's got length. They can run Kentucky off of the three-point line at times, which was a problem in this game. But I think Kentucky's still going to try it. I think they're going to go out there. They're going to try and shoot some outside shots. Going to try and get them up. If Rob Dillingham's able to go, I'm sure he's going to be throwing them up there. I'm sure Reeves is too. Reed Shepherd as well. And then I think they're going to be able to distribute the basketball a little bit better. I just think Kentucky's offense, despite scoring 87 points this last go-round against Florida, I think they can do better. I think that they can do better. So let me know what you think about this game in the comments below. Let me know if you think that the Wildcats are going to win. Give me a final score prediction as well. I think, well, I'll say this. Ken Palm says 90-84. That's what Kentucky's going to win by. I'm going to say Kentucky wins 82-77. I'm going to say they're going to win 82-77, and I don't think that they're going to be a ton of free throws here to end this game. I think Kentucky will be up by somewhere between 7-10 as this wraps up, and then Florida's able to kind of close the gap to make it a 5 or 6 point game. So that's just my guess. That's my prediction. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Kentucky. You can follow the show on Twitter at LockedOnUK. You can follow me on Twitter at @LanceDawe_ and follow the show on Instagram. That is at Kentucky Podcast. I am looking forward to, by the way, days here soon where the sun does not set at 5 or 6 o'clock in the afternoon. I will see you all tomorrow for a recap episode of this game. Have a great rest of your day, everybody, and God bless.